The estimated net worth of drug kingpin Pablo Escobar was around $30 billion. Add inflation, and that's nearly $60 billion in today's world. At the height of his power, Escobar's business was bringing in $22 billion per year. Now, the question is, how did he spend his billions? Here's what we know about it. Named after the Italian city of Naples, Pablo's 7,000-acre estate was one of the many palatial homes that he owned. Reportedly, this property cost him around $63 million and included everything from a soccer field, dinosaur statues, and artificial lakes, to a bullfighting arena, an airstrip, and a tennis court, among other things, of course. It was the main residence of the Colombian drug lord in the 80s, and it's situated around 150 kilometers east of Medellin. At its peak, the estate was probably one of the most luxurious private abodes ever built, and to this day it remains a popular tourist attraction. The entrance to the Hacienda Napoles is marked by an airplane perched at the top of the gate. It's the same airplane that was used for Escobar's first drug run to the US. Pablo Escobar also had his very own private zoo on the Hacienda Napoles estate. The private zoo might make you think that it wasn't grand, but before you think that, hear us out. This zoo contained over 200 animals, and they weren't just small animals, no sir. These animals included elephants, ostriches, hippopotamuses, zebras, camels, and even giraffes. Most of the animals were smuggled into the country from abroad on Escobar's drug planes. Soon after his death, these animals were shifted to public zoos, but the authorities left behind 4 hippos. These 4 hippos since have multiplied, and there are 40 of them living in the area. The authorities had to castrate the male hippos to stop them from reproducing because they were a threat to the locals and destroying their farms. It seems like Escobar is still causing trouble for the locals. Another estate that Escobar owned was the La Catedral, built with the purpose of being a prison. It's believed that Escobar offered himself to be arrested, but on one condition: he'll build his own prison. The authorities agreed, and the La Catedral was built as a result. It was an extraordinarily grand prison that not only contained telephones, computers, and fax machines, but also a soccer pitch. Not to mention a waterfall, a sauna, a nightclub, and so many more things. However, Escobar ended up torturing and killing a couple of cartel members in the facility, and the authorities decided to move him to a less accommodating prison, only for him to escape. The king of cocaine liked to party. And if it wasn't evident from the previous few things we've shown, wait till you hear about La Isla Grande. It was one of the many party homes that Escobar owned, but none were as lavish as the mansion on La Isla Grande. This huge mansion is on a tiny, secluded island hidden from plain view in between the Caribbean Sea and a tropical forest. The grandiose complex of luxury buildings can still be spotted, and it usually appears in the Instagram stories of daredevils and fortune hunters. At its peak, it had luxury waterfront apartments with a mansion and a palm court centered around a huge swimming pool. There was also, of course, a helipad, and the estate could house over 300 partygoers. These party animals even had gold shower heads in their washrooms. As per many, the place used to resemble Miami's South Beach. Okay, this might not be a huge investment as compared to the other insane entries on this list, but it should give you an idea about the absurdity of Escobar's wealth. According to many sources, he would spend nearly $3,000 on rubber bands to hold the $100 bills together. Inflation adjusted, that amount equals well over $10,000 in today's world. And if that's not crazy, we don't know what is. Oh, and did we mention that this was a monthly expenditure? Yeah, Escobar was spending around $3,000 every month in the 1980s on rubber bands. Let that sink in. Now, who knew starting a fire could be this expensive? Apparently, Escobar spent over $2 million to start a fire. I'm sure you're a little confused. Well, it's a heartwarming story, surprisingly. The El Patron was in a hideout, and his daughter got really cold one night. There wasn't enough wood lying around to light a fire, and it was too risky to leave the hideout, so Escobar did what any man would do. He burned more than $2 million worth of bills to keep his daughter warm and ensure that she pulled through the night. Money is paper after all, isn't it? It's a matter of perception. When you have so much money, you usually put it away in banks. Well, at least that's the sensible thing to do. Like, yeah, we wouldn't know because we've never had this problem. Escobar did, though. His money wasn't clean, so banks wanted nothing to do with it, and he had to resort to stashing huge stacks of dollar bills in basements. Now, that's fine, except for the rats. The rats in Escobar's estates were responsible for eating millions of dollars at the very minimum. In fact, his brother, who was also the accountant, reported that he'd write off around $2 to $3 billion every year to losses, which were mostly because of rats. Well, this is the most unsurprising way of spending money, so we don't blame Pablo Escobar for having one of the wildest car collections in history. He was a fan of speedy cars, and they were probably a requirement too, considering the close encounters he had with the police. That's why the Porsche 911 tends to stand out among his crazy car collection. Apparently, only 15 of these were ever made, so it was definitely a prized possession. He also owned a Mercedes-Benz 600 Grosser, which shows that he wasn't all about speed, but also recognized a bit of class. Among others, a Simca 1000 was found, which isn't exactly a luxury car, but given the condition of the roads, it's understandable. The king of cocaine also had a 1930s Cadillac, Porsche 356, a red Mercedes 300 SL, and of course a Land Cruiser, among many more. A Burtberg from Germany made its way to Escobar's garage, and he was pictured in a Porsche 935. Now, if the list seems to be getting too much, don't blame us. The man was wasting billions for fun. This, at least, was a useful investment. Oh, and before we move on to the next one, he also had a Renault 4 and 46 DeSoto, among a few other Mercedes as well. He wasn't just a fan of cars, he also had a thing for motorcycles and some really heavy bikes. Escobar owned dozens of 80s-styled motorcycles, which were a norm to move around his massive estate. There are videos of him going on random bike races with his friends, and we'll wager that he won most of those. That's not all, though. Pablo Escobar also owned a Harley-Davidson. But wait, that's underselling the bicycle because it wasn't just a Harley-Davidson, but rather the one that was reportedly owned by Frank Sinatra. Being able to control 80% of the world's cocaine supply isn't an easy task, and it isn't achieved without having a considerable amount of airplanes and a lot of influence in airports and high offices. Among his collection were 142 planes and 20 helicopters, not including a military plane and various others whose make hasn't been determined yet. That's a wrap for this video. Did you know any of these things about Escobar's wealth? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.